Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I second that.
It's so moved by Barbara, seconded by Godfrey. Any discussion? Any corrections? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Hold on.
Okay.
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry. Page
That's
4,
okay.
page 4, paragraph 8, where it
Okay.
talks about diversifying other opportunities beyond History Day and Invention Convention. I had suggested math counts as a possible option. I just want to make sure that was in the record. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, with that correction, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm missing that male voice, but I know he said aye before.
Again.
Thank you, Godfrey. All right, so unanimously approved with the correction, page 4, paragraph 8, so noted, math counts. And drum roll, the item everybody's waiting to learn about, the summer school plan. And Dr. Myers, I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you so much, Sherelle. Good evening. You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't start our conversation today thanking, first and foremost, my curriculum and instruction team. Many of them are on the call tonight. Janine, Tina, Jennifer Katona, Jennifer Scanlon, Helene, Lindsay, Kate, Rose, Diane. I have to tell you that the middle of March, all of a sudden one day, we found ourselves in a COVID pandemic. And literally within 24 hours, we turned an entire system of almost 12,000 children into a virtual learning world. And I know myself, I wouldn't have made it through phase 1 and not even into phase 2 if it hadn't been for the curriculum and instruction department, the support, their vision. They literally worked around the clock day after day, trying to support our teachers, learning in each phase and trying to stay one step ahead. So honestly, from the bottom of my heart, everything we're going to talk about today for summer learning is a result of where we've been over the last 3 months and how we've used this as an opportunity to get stronger and to understand what this blended world looks like. How do we maintain rigorous learning and do that in a way that keeps our children safe and that we're able to actually use a blended learning environment maybe to enhance our learning? I'd also be remiss to thank my colleagues across central office, every corner of central office, from operations to HR to budget to the special education services, every corner pulled together during this and made tremendous decisions and gave support to all of our buildings. So thank you so much for that. And you'll see as we go through our summer academy work, and with Ralph's team and their technical support, everything that we've done has been in partnership, and we continue to move that partnership forward. I know we have a long agenda tonight, so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of outline for the board the key issues, and I'm very pleased to say that Dr. Costanza is on our line tonight with us as well, because he's been working so hard on ensuring all of the safety protocols. Ralph is on the line with all the technical protocols. We also have Stacy on the line because she is the point person with Yvette on making sure that we align with special ed. Helene is on the line to make sure we've integrated support for ELS, and the curriculum design team will kind of lay out how we're formatting the summer learning opportunities. It's a large cast, right? We're very fortunate. We just want to remind the board that we will be looking at a 5-week summer school starting on July 6th, which aligns with the governor's guidelines. We do start the week before, so we have staff trainings. And this training, we're running trainings right now, actually for the entire month of June on technology and technology applications. The training that will happen on June 29, 30, and July 1. is really specific to the learning outcomes for the students and the data that we'll be using to drive our summer program. As we look at
Sounds
the
good.
K Academy, just as a reminder of our purpose, so, and this comes from board policy, we identify those children that are reading at the 25th percentile and below, or students that we feel are in jeopardy of falling below. This is a gap closing summer school where we've had excellent data over the last 3 years where we've been able to mitigate summer regression. One of the things we worry about is when children have extended periods of time, which is actually defined as more than 3 weeks of no instruction, we can actually document academic regression, and we want to maintain growth and progress. This year, we did take the opportunity through CARES Act to expand our summer program K through 8 and at the high school level. And I'll turn it over to Janine, and she'll outline a little bit for you how we were able to triangulate our data so that we could recommend students for the summer program.
Thank you, Brenda. But first, I think I would be remiss if we didn't thank you. I don't really think we ever do that too often. Yes. Your perseverance, your guidance over these past couple of months, your positive outlook on what is actually possible has really moved our team forward, and we thank you for that. You really have been our rock. I'm thrilled that we're here. I'm thrilled that we are going to be able to support our students throughout the summer. And I'll tell you that 66% of those students who were identified, and I'm going to talk about the identification process in a minute, are going to participate in summer learning. 66%, and this is in K-8 specifically. So that's really, really good news.
I'm sorry, what's the percentage?
66%, Sherelle, as of today, of students who are identified are actually going to participate in one way or another, whether it's face-to-face or hybrid or completely remote.
Got it.
So because our summer academy has always focused on literacy, we decided to continue to identify students based on their literacy data. However, we're going to talk a little bit later that you know that we're going to incorporate math this summer as well, but our identification process remained very similar. So if we look at K3, we use multiple data points to identify students for summer academy, and we knew just how important it was not to rely on any one measure to make this important decision. And so our teachers used a multiple approach, right? A triangulation of both formal and informal measures from the middle to the end of the year to identify students who, as Dr. Myers mentioned, were at that 25th percentile and below, or who were in jeopardy of falling below. So that's our K3 process. And there are our data points, both formal and informal. If we look at grades 4 through 8, you know, the process was similar, but the formal measures were different. So whereas in K3, we use DIBELS that you see here. If we move to the next slide, we used AIMSweb, as you know, and that triangulation occurred in the exact same manner. So are there any questions so far about the identification process? I know we've talked about this a few times, and I didn't want to keep repeating, but you see everything there on your screen. Is there anything you're wondering?
No, I think, no, I'm okay. I guess if I did have to ask a question, I know that it's 66% for K-8, and I'm just wondering, you know, what the percentages would be for K-3 and 4-8 if you have those.
Oh, I have those. So in K3, 74% of those who were identified will be participating.
And that's the 900, let's see.
900 and, well, as of today, it's 914. We went up 2 students.
Okay.
44% of those 914 chose face-to-face, and we're going to talk about the models in a minute. 56% of those, of that 74% who's participating, chose remote.
Gotcha.
We also broke it down in grades 4 and 5. 73% of those who are identified will participate in grades 4 and 5.
Okay.
33% chose what we call a hybrid model, which is a
Mhm.
little bit of in-school and remote. And 49% of those who decided to participate chose the remote model.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, and in grades 6 through 8, this is where we added a considerable number of students, I believe about 43 students today in the 6 to 8
Yep.
model, right? 42% of those participating, I'm sorry, 42% are participating of those that were identified of that 400.
Mhm.
Actually, it's 400 and I think 22 now.
Gotcha.
50% did not respond, but 29% chose the hybrid and 71% chose the remote.
Gotcha.
Okay. I think it was
Okey doke.
43. I misspoke. It's 43 students overall, but about 22, it looks like, joined the 6-8 groups today.
Mm.
So there's some good
Okay.
numbers for you.
And just as a
Mhm.
reminder, one of the decision points for some of our families in grades 4 through 8 is we are only providing transportation in grades K through
Mhm.
3. So they needed to consider that as a factor about being able to participate fully.
Right. So let's move to the next slide. And I just want to review for you what our options were. And when we polled our families in K3, we offered them 2 different options, option A and option B. Option A is that face-to-face model where students come to school all 25 days for 3 hours each day in a very small group. There will be no more than 8 students in a classroom because we want to leave room for adults in the room as well. And we did ask our families, as Dr. Myers said, if they absolutely needed transportation. Of the
Mhm.
301 students who will attend, 170 of them as of today said that they needed transportation. So it's a little more than half of that population. Okay, very manageable. Option B is that remote learning option, which will include both synchronous and asynchronous learning opportunities. Again, this is going to be inclusive of small group instruction. There'll be tutoring. There'll be one-on-one conferring with students. Students will meet as a group. We'll look at schedules in a minute with their teacher at the start of the instructional block, and then they may break apart into small groups. They may have assignments, then they come back together to learn together. And this is going to be done in 2-hour sessions. And we're going to ask our families which session they would like to participate in. And you see the sessions there in the second bullet on the right, 8 to 10,
Mhm.
10:30 to 12:30, or 1:30 to 3:30.
Mhm.
So that's the
Just as
K3.
a
Mhm.
couple of things that we've learned during our COVID response, and we've built it in here. So what we understood first is that when you're a young child learning to read, we really wanted an opportunity for children to come face to face, and parents had said to us they really felt their children needed that. But we also found that in our model for our youngest children, the more time we really spent one-on-one and small group is when we got to some of the direct instruction, where we really
Mhm.
could do some of the skill building in literacy and in mathematics. So we wanted to capitalize on that model and bring that into our summer programming.
Got it.
Okay, so let's move to the next slide. Thank you. So for grades 4 and 5, they had a choice of 2 options as well. One option is called the hybrid model, and that's where, similar to K3, they do spend some time in school, but the hybrid model has students in groups of no more than 16, and then we take those 16 students, divide them into 2 groups, and the first group will attend week 1, while group 2 attends online with support from the paraeducator with very specific protocols, opportunities to talk about their independent reading, individual tutoring, and things like that. And then the following week they switch. So there's face-to-face time in school, and then there's also support online as well. The remote option that you see there in B is very similar to what I just described in K3. Okay, where there's a mixture of asynchronous and synchronous learning, where they come together as a group, they learn together, then they may break off and the teacher may work with a small group while other students are an assignment, something follow through activity, and then they come back together for feedback and further learning.
It's
And then if
interesting,
you
with this
move-
model, we went with an alternating week to help our parents. You know, one of the things people will often say about models is, you know, A, B, A, B, and it's very hard for families to coordinate childcare and to support their children if you change the model too much. So we really went for our grades 4 through 8 with, you would know that your child was in face-to-face for a week and then would be supported for a week. And that would give you some continuity of instruction, but also help families to plan.
Exactly.
How many students go, like, just say for the 8 to 10 session, like how many students online and how many students in person?
So in grades 4 and 5,
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I got it. I think it's eight students.
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's no more than 16 students in a group assigned to a teacher.
Right. Yep,
And
I
those
remember now.
further divided into 2 manageable groups, right?
Okay.
So that there's
Yep.
8 one week and 8 next.
Got
And
it.
that's why
Okay.
we also, a teacher is paired with a paraprofessional so that there is another person that can work with students in the distance learning environment while the teacher is conducting live instruction.
And in all of these models and in all grade levels, there is also support from an ELL teacher as well as a special education teacher in each of the buildings. So that might mean some push-in support. That might mean some modifications behind the scenes in lesson planning and things like that. So we're already working with our colleagues in special education and our English language learner department to help in our plan.
Okay.
Our 6-8 components were exactly the same as 4-5. So the models were exactly the same, the hybrid and the remote.
Okay.
So in all grades, we are incorporating these components in grades K-8, the reading, the writing, the math, our social emotional learning, and our STEAM related content in the form of investigations. We call them investigations. They are our authentic performance tasks related to our theme of citizenship under the umbrella theme of healthy children, healthy communities. And we're doing this work in partnership with our partners at Stepping Stones Museum and Literacy How. We wanted to really ensure that our students were participating in a real meaningful experience and not just a skills-based approach, but they are going to participate in something that's really meaningful and something that really matters. And that theme of citizenship is not only very timely right now, but is so important to address in any climate. So it's really good work and we're excited about that.
So may I just ask a couple of quick questions?
Of course.
So math has been a common theme that I've heard from parents. Some parents feel, I guess, we missed the boat with math. And I get it, you know, we had to throw this together in such a quick time. So math, I'm really glad that we're going to be concentrating on math. The social emotional piece, can you just briefly describe, you know, in the time of COVID, how we're handling children who may not understand, you know, what's going on? Can you just briefly tell me a little bit about the social emotional learning?
Of course. I'm actually going to turn this over to Jennifer Katona. Jennifer has been working with another colleague, Jennifer Scanlon, to help develop our social emotional talk points. And she has some things that she might want to share with you right now.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just going to pull it up onto the screen real quick for you and just show you the calendar that we created. It's a K-8 calendar, and the thought process is that teachers, depending on the age group that they're working with, can scale up or scale down. We spent a lot of time thinking about themes for the 5 weeks. So we have building community, getting to know each other. I'm having a little trouble scrolling down, pardon me. Getting to know each other, mindfulness, caring for ourselves, caring for others in our school and class community, and then caring for others in our exterior community, so the Norwalk or beyond community, depending on our age group. And we're just spending some time getting to know each other, building class community, using some of the arts-based skills, using some of the other resources we have from Stepping Stones. I'll just show you an example. So a teacher might grab hold of each day Then they'll be given some resources on the importance of them, a variety of, we're still working on this, a variety of activities, and then how they might be modified for remote learning so that they don't have to go to various places to find activities. It's all at their fingertips. And for students are not going to have a different experience no matter what model they chose, as Janine said. So if they're home one day and back in the classroom another day, they're having the same experience as their fellow students, which is going to help build that community.
And are there any like supports for any kids that may need additional supports?
So Sherelle, in addition to the work that we're doing in programming, our counseling department and with Yvette is also doing some small group interventions during Summer Academy as well. And so those will be scheduled. And they have topics around tolerance that they're.
Is it me or is she
the
breaking up?
academic.
She's breaking up.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was just my phone.
No.
I noticed that Yvette had her hand up. Maybe she could address it if she wanted to.
Sure, thanks. So we have a group of social workers, psychologists, and school counselors that have committed to running groups over the summer. We'll be running groups integrated with curriculum and instructions work. The schools have also identified approximately 200 students that may be especially vulnerable at this point with or without IEPs that may or may not be coming to ESY or summer school. And we will be developing groups for those children as well. So some of it will be pushed into the schedule that Janine just shared. Others will be small groups after the regular schedule, and that will be in consultation with families. We're looking at 2 sessions a week, either group or individual, depending upon kids' needs.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question for you, Vet. When mentioning the counselors and pupil support personnel, are you also including our partners?
Guys, I'm online. Say that again. I'm sorry.
Included in the provision of services this summer?
I missed you again. I'm sorry. If you could repeat it one more time, Godfrey.
Are our community partners involved in provision of services this summer around social emotional learning?
Yes, we've been working with MJ and our partners, our community-based partners. They are also running groups. We're doing some integrated trauma-informed care work together. The groups that I just described are really linked towards our summer work in terms of the academic interventions. But we are working closely with our community partners through Norwalk Acts, Fairfield Child Guidance, and we're continuing to do the outreach group work for our recently immigrated families as well.
Thank you.
So we kind of outlined the K-8 program. We'd like to spend a few minutes on the 9-12 high school program. Tina, would you like to talk a little about that?
Sure. So the credit recovery portion of summer school is very similar to what you'll notice with the 6-8 model. We are offering 2 different options, either completely remote or a hybrid, where there's a blended model between face-to-face instruction and virtual. The schedule looks a little bit different. You'll notice the AA, BB, C at the top. And so at this level, we really felt that it was structured needed to be structured in a way so that students could have more, at least 2 days of ongoing face-to-face instruction while in one group, while another group is at home virtually learning and then flip-flopping into the AABB model. C represents the 5th day of the week where everyone would go virtual and be more like a flex day for students to do small group conferring and kind of catch up on some work. Obviously, the program at the high school level is focused on credit recovery. We noticed some common trends in the 6-8 group relative to the data from parents regarding transportation. That was also a need for most of our students. And so we found it to be a 70-30 split, where most of the students were asking for a virtual environment versus a hybrid model. So you'll see that we do have a schedule for students. Basically, we offer 2 options. Period 1, this was just a model sample where a student would come for a 90-minute block. They would have a break in between, and then another 90-minute block in the afternoon. Once class is over, there are additional opportunities for small group instruction with their teacher, and also do some conferring and small conferencing when needed. So if they needed some extra help, they have that opportunity as well. And so one of the things we talked a lot about in this K-12 summer environment was we wanted to really ensure that there was still that integration of technology and engagement and motivation for students. There was a lot of, I wouldn't say concern, but we wanted to make sure that we were really maximizing the use of our tools to ensure that when students were either virtual or face-to-face, number one, it was seamless. And number 2, we wanted to ensure that students wanted to come online and actually learn. So we really ensured that some of the tools that we may have had in existence when we went to the virtual environment, Ralph and I are really working hard with our team to maximize those tools for not only the teachers, and see, these are some of those tools that we've regularly talked about, how it's seamlessly integrated with Google Classroom. The access is very easy for not only teachers to upload and deliver content and distribute that content to students, but also that it's easy for students to use as well. And more importantly, we want to ensure that the tools that we're using are high quality, high leverage tools to maximize motivation and engagement for students. There are a lot of tools available to districts right now. We, in our office, as well as in Ralph's office, we spend a considerable amount of time vetting these tools, making sure that they are not only good tools for now in this environment, but also when we're not in this environment, and that we can sustain these tools over time, and that teachers and students will have these tools available to them beyond summer and beyond when we're hopefully not in this pandemic at this time. So those were 2 slides where you could see some of the integration for the teachers, and then some of those same tools that students would actually get to use as well. Some of them are very similar to what they've been doing and using, but since we've moved into the summer environment, we have structured some additional tools such as IXL in reading and in math that we're weaving into the platforms, not only for summer, but also we've also capitalized on some of those opportunities into next school year as well. And we've contracted with many of those platforms to ensure that we can sustain those tools for a minimum of 3 years. So when we look at sustainability, it's not a year-long process, it's a multi-year process. So we want to make sure that we really have the opportunity to dive into these tools and train our teachers and make sure that they have students have the opportunity to continue using them beyond the summer school and beyond COVID. That was our mission.
Thanks, Tina. I'll turn it over to Yvette and Stacy to talk a little about ESY planning.
So,
You want me to do it or you to do it, Yvette?
yeah, you can do.
Okay.
That is really active.
Okay. So we've been working with the curriculum department, and in collaboration with the model that they've been working with, as well as the school sites, so that we want to make this for our families and for the community, that there's some cohesion within the programs and locations and times, all of the dates, all of those kinds of things. We've planned for 3 different models of support for our special education students. The first is our ESY in-person program. And we have a 3-hour program that's in person that students will be receiving live instruction from a special education teacher with the support of a para in the classroom. We have, we'll be running 2 classes at Fox Run, 2 classes at Rowayton, and a class at Marvin. So when we looked at the number of students and we put those together, we'll also have 1 at Nathan Hale and 1 at Rowayton, as well as 2 at the high school, and then several classes at the preschool. So all of these students will be getting 3 hours for K through 12 and 2 hours for the preschool of direct instruction related to their IEP goals within the ESY program. Can we do the second slide? At the schools, they'll be getting their grab and go breakfast and lunches. They'll be provided. We've been working with Jill as part of food services. And for those students who qualify for ESY, we've offered transportation for all grade levels, K through 12, with transition for those families that qualify for ESY who need transportation. The second option is for our distance learning for our students who are not going to be coming in person to ESY, but will be receiving ESY virtually. Again, the program will be 3 hours and they will be getting direct instruction from a special education teacher with support from a paraprofessional. All of our related services, counseling, speech and language, occupational therapy, all of those services will be provided virtually to both groups of students. So whether students are in person or if they are doing the virtual, they'll be getting their related services that way. Teachers will work with the parents to develop to schedule the services, as well as to let them know what this daily schedule will be so that they can align that. And then we have, go back up one more. Can you go back one? There. Then we have our third, which is our special education students who qualify for the summer academy. And so those are our students who will not be attending an ESY class. So an ESY class is just a special education group. They'll be attending the summer academy with their general education peers, either virtually or in person, depending on the choice that they made. And then we will be providing additional special education services to those students. Janine talked a little bit about it earlier, in that we'll be doing some push-in services, we'll be doing some after-school support. It'll be really looking at how do we provide support to those students in that general education environment. Students will also be getting, in addition to the special ed teacher, but also counseling, speech and language services, whatever they need to assist them in the successful participation and completion of the work that they'll be getting from the summer academy.
All students will have a daily social emotional learning opportunity. We'll be working with the methodology aligned with CASEL from Rethink, and we'll the goals, as well as issues that Tina spoke of with regard to building community, co-op sensitivity, with leading to issues of equality and equal justice.
So this is some of our registration data. So when we look at, this is NECC, we have 40, I moved my screen so I could see more people. I'm gonna make that bigger. So we have 43 that are doing online ESY, and we have 27 who are doing in person. And we do have 16 parents who have opted out of ESY. So we are planning small group at the preschool as well as the online learning. And then for the K-12, we have 56 students that will be participating in person. And as you can see, we have a large number of students participating in online ESYs. We have 123 who are participating online. We have 18 that are opting out, and we have 35 that are ESY eligible who are also attending Summer Academy. There's still a large number, there's a larger number of students attending Summer Academy who are special education identified students. However, this is that group that qualified for both programs, ESY and Summer Academy, that these are the students who are opting out of ESY to participate in the Summer Academy. And so they're included in the Summer Academy numbers of either in person or online. Are there any questions about that?
I do have one. I believe you said for the social emotional, that part of it was social justice.
Yes, Sherelle.
So is that something that's already pre-done, or will you have the flexibility of discussing what's going on in the news today?
We're absolutely going to be discussing what's going on in the news today. It's, you know, part of the work that takes on enhanced meaning these past few weeks of, you know, when we say all means all, and issues related to difference and celebrating that and having children's voice in those discussions. There's some really excellent resources from the National School Psych Association, as well as several other recommendations coming out of Boston University and Yale. So we'll be working, you know, with the best resources that are out there and delivering them in a way that's appropriate for the age and ability of our students.
So will that, and I'm just curious, I mean, you don't have to, you know, flesh it out, but will that include Black Lives Matter, so the kids know what that means, even though we know all lives matters, but specifically because of what's going on, just the climate of the world right now.
Absolutely.
And we're sort of on this stage. Okay.
Absolutely, Sherelle. And, you know, we'll be working with our colleagues in the curriculum and in the community for a community-focused curriculum that addresses these very intensive and courageous and much needed conversations.
Got it. Thank you so much.
We've talked a bit about the academic programming and how we're meeting the needs of all students, from identification to models. But, you know, one of our dreams was to work together to bring students face to face and to start working on those safety protocols of how we make sure that all children are safe during COVID. And Dr. Costanza has done a wonderful job outlining these components. These are some slides that we were sharing at a recent meeting with the mayor's office, and I know Frank would like to make a few comments.
Thank you, Dr. Myers, and good evening, everyone. What an outstanding presentation from the team tonight. I'm glad I could share some updates related to our health and safety schedule if we run in-person summer school. So the superintendent has to sign off and basically submit to the State Department of Education that the district has met all of the health and safety criteria set forth by the Connecticut Health Department and the State Department of Education reopening guidelines. And one of those reports is a single-page bulleted list that includes bullets related to shrinking the gap or closing the equity gap since the COVID outbreak. And some of the other bulleted items include health and safety. One in particular on this particular form is bullet item number 5, and it includes the health and safety areas that are of the greatest concern to the Connecticut Health Department. What you see in front of you on this PowerPoint is a breakout of those various components that the superintendent and the board must be confident in is being addressed properly by the district. So if we take a look at this grid, you will see that it's configured with a column for issues, one on the status of the development and implementation, and the third is the responsibility or accountability column. And under this issues column, you have the various issues contained within this fifth bullet of the form that I've talked to you about tonight. And the first issue is around density. And we know that community transmission of COVID-19 occurs when there are congregations or gatherings of people that exceed what would be safe in any particular space. And in the reopening guidelines, the state has defined no more than 10 students to one classroom. And so you'll see here that our Summer Academy and ESY plan specifically addresses the student-teacher ratio. In the case of Summer Academy, 9 students for every 1 adult in the classroom. And for ESY, a range of anywhere from 5 to 8 students to 2 adults, including the teacher and the paraprofessional. In terms of density, we would make sure that we had staggered times so that students were not congregating or arriving and dismissing all at precisely the same time. And we can really control for that, given bathroom breaks, outdoor activities, students coming inside the building from the playground or some outdoor classroom. And even at arrival and dismissal, we can do some sorting and coordinating so that we don't have large groups of students. And you can see here that the responsibility for implementing that includes both Brenda Myers and Yvette Gorovich, the special education supervisors, and of course, building principals and staff at the buildings that would be supporting the principal in that work. Another area the state has asked districts to focus on is material sharing. So in our pre-COVID-19 perspectives, we can remember what it was like or what it is like for our kids to sit at a table or a cluster of desks and share crayons or markers or poster paper or any other classroom resources. Our plan would eliminate any possibility of students handling the same materials or supplies. And you can see how we've outlined the building responsibility for making sure that that continues to happen throughout the duration of the plan. Third is our facilities considerations. There's quite a lot here. So we talked about a staggered entry and dismissal for bus students and walkers needing to be health screened. I guess it would be important to kind of give you a glimpse of what the school day would be like for a student, really from the time that they, let's say for a bus student, arrived at their bus stop. So in our plan, we imagine and have designed for a student and their parent to walk up to their bus stop, both wearing a mask. And then at the bus stop, bus stops, a paraprofessional gets off the bus and they have a thermometer which will read the temperature of each student before they're admitted onto the bus. The guidelines call for a temperature to be below 100 degrees Fahrenheit in order to be admitted on the bus. In addition to that, they would get on the first day at the bus stop 2 to 3 health questions, asking specific questions about any symptoms over the prior 24 hours, fever, cough, etc. And after the first day, they would have this question set. We're thinking probably safest to do it in hard copy form, provide the family with about 5 days worth at a time. And then each subsequent day, the child and parent would come to the bus stop with that question set answered, parent would need to remain with the child until they boarded the bus in the event that a student had a fever and we were not allowed to actually have them board the bus. So the student would arrive at school. They would be joined by their walkers, classmates, students who are dropped off by a parent. Students who are bused to their school would walk in and go directly to their classroom. Students who are walkers or dropped off would have to go through the same health screening that bus students go through. So there would be a temperature taken and questions answered prior to walkers proceeding into their classrooms. The guidelines also call for every school to have an isolation room identified. And we've determined with the help of Joanne Malinowski that it makes better sense for us to utilize an actual classroom for this purpose as opposed to a nurse's office, which really limits space. And so we're in the process right now of identifying the isolation room in each school that will run summer school. We're planning to have these spaces, as to the best extent possible, contain a bathroom and a sink. We're looking into trying to create some smaller areas where potentially symptomatic students could sit in isolation with a nurse until they can be removed from the school. And so that work is in process. We have working on engineering our classrooms so that we can have 6 feet of physical distancing for all students involved in the learning. Park and Rec has not made a final decision as to whether or not they would be running summer camp. If they do, there are 5 schools in our portfolio that they would be eager to utilize, and that includes a couple of classrooms in each. So we would be coordinating with them on that. Dining, of course, would look a lot different than it has in the past, where students sit and eat together. At the dismissal time each day, we would have a grab and go lunch and breakfast. Students would pick up their brown bagged lunch and breakfast and then eat their lunch when they get home from school and breakfast the following morning before returning to school. We have plexiglass guards installed in main offices and at other high interaction locations in schools. And we're working on plexiglass cubes for one-on-one testing. You can see their principal, school staff, Mr. Hodel, Mr. Hamilton, and myself involved in the implementation of that portion of our schedule. PPE and face covering is another critical element of the plan. We have a supply of 3 cloth masks per NPS employee. We have about 2,800 employees. Those masks are in stock. We've also placed an order for student cloth masks, which is what has been required. We actually have a large supply of surgical masks for students, but those will just remain in reserve because cloth masks have been the requirement. Any staff that are working within 6 feet of students would be provided with face shields in addition to their cloth masks. And in those exceptions where we have staff that work with students who are developing their daily lifestyle habits and maybe exceptional, those staff would include the PPE would include gowns, gloves, and face shields to provide those individuals with the maximum possible protective gear. Joanne Malinowski, very much involved in this, building principals, teachers, paras, and nurses. Testing and contact tracing is another component to reopening schools, be it in the summer or in the fall. Thus far, We have asked all staff to complete self-assessments at home on a daily basis using our Google Doc form. The student assessment would, as I mentioned earlier, would be completed prior to boarding the bus or entering the school. We are going to ensure that the cohorts of student and staff remain constant. So no flexible grouping, no students moving from classroom to classroom or from teacher to teacher based upon gaps in learning. We would keep these students together for the purposes of contact tracing. Everyone that comes into the building would sign in daily. Student attendance is taken at the arrival and at the departure times. There would be, as I mentioned, temperatures taken prior to boarding school buses or entering the building. I've noted here COVID-19 testing. So in the event that we would have a student become symptomatic or answer questions during the health screen that would be concerning, we would ask, and we're developing this protocol right in the moment, would ask that their health provider provide a clearance document that this person is not a COVID-19 risk to the district before they would be able to return to school. And we are also in the process of finalizing our contact tracing support and resource protocol, who we are working on with Deanna Demore, our health director, Joanne Malinowski, and Grace Fetter in our own health office. And then you can see here just a bit further down, clear communication protocol for school closures or reopening of schools should any classroom or school be closed due to a COVID concern or verified case. In each of those instances, we would work very closely with Health Director Diamore in analyzing the situation and providing clear communication to parents and families about what is happening and what to expect in terms of reestablishing learning. Any student that goes out would continue their summer school learning via remote learning. The curriculum office has developed a robust plan for summer learning over the 5-week period, and a student would not miss a beat if, God forbid, they themselves contracted COVID-19 or were symptomatic, potentially having it. No visitors would be prohibited in the building. Staff, as I mentioned, and students would complete daily assessments, health assessments. The nurse would be doing individual assessments for any students as she or he normally would in any summer school experience. Health screening and attendance monitoring, you can see here. I think I've talked mostly of the items listed here. Again, the health screener would ask the parent and the student to answer questions related to fever, cough, sore throat, shortness of breath experience within the prior 24 hours. If staff or student answers yes to any of those, they would not be permitted into the building or onto the school bus. Dr. Weinberger and Health Director Diamore have stated that temperatures, body temperatures cannot exceed 100 degrees. So students' fevers need to be below 100 degrees in order to attend. There'd be daily attendance calls made for any students that are absent, just to ensure what the absence is about and to make sure that we're protecting that student and the health and well-being of the students participating in summer school. You can read here staff responsible for this. I won't cover that. And then you can see promoting health and hygiene practices. So all students would wash their hands once into the building and in their classrooms. They'd be required to wash hands after bathroom use and upon re-entering the building from any outdoor activity. The guidelines ask that school districts attempt to incorporate as much open classroom, outdoor classrooms as possible. And depending upon the heat index, we would certainly like to hold as much outdoor learning as possible. We're looking to maximize classrooms that have hand washing stations, bathrooms within those classrooms wherever possible. Hand sanitizer will be available in every classroom and at the point of entry. Cleaning and disinfection, we continue to learn more each day about the various areas. We received communication, actually the health director received a communication from the health department just today, discouraging the use of fogging machines. We had purchased a fogging machine. Bill Hodel has one in stock. And the concern from the health department is that it could trigger skin or respiratory issues in children. And so they recommend utilizing traditional cleaning measures when cleaning buildings. So we do have a fogging machine, but won't be using it at this point based upon this afternoon's guidance from the health department. Custodians will deep clean each building on a nightly basis, preparing for the next school day. We talked about the isolation rooms, and let's see, actually, looks like I may have skipped a section here. I'm sorry, or not skipped, but inadvertently scrolled up. Deep cleaning buses between tiers. So our intent is to run 2 summer school schedules, the first starting at 8 a.m. and the second starting at 9:30 a.m. And between those 2 start times, the buses would be sanitized before making the pickup of the second tier students for 9:30. One other small thing that we're doing is making sure that those in the building define one place for all receivables, one entry point, so that we're monitoring everything that's coming in and going out of buildings, including objects and deliveries. You can see here bus transportation is modified considerably. Our large type 1 buses are only allowed to hold up to 12 students. 1 student would sit on 1 seat, the bench style seat, and there would be no student across the aisle, the bench across the aisle. And in the next row, we would simply rotate the student to the other side of the aisle. And that's going to provide us with the necessary 6 feet of social distancing space that's required under these reopening guidelines. On the type 2 buses, we don't intend to include more than 3 to 4 students, again, with alternating rows and 1 child per seat. Durham Transportation Services has been involved in developing these protocols with Joanna Zanvetter. There'll be a bus driver and a para on every summer school bus starting on July 6th. And then lastly, I'll close, and I'm sorry for this extended time, but in terms of staffing, we would have 1 certified administrator on site, which is always the case at summer school, but we wanted to make sure that we have that in our plan. The opening guidelines require 1 nurse at each site. After initially some concern about nurse participation, I got a very good update email from my health coordinator that she has 13 nurses who have confirmed that they're planning to work the summer school schedule, which is certainly a great relief to us who have been planning the summer school for some time now. We'll have 1 custodian at each school, 1 security guard, and a vet is assuring us that there'll be additional paras assigned at reduced class sizes with students that require intense needs. And so this plan is not one that I designed on my own. I've gotten quite a bit of feedback and input from a vet and Brenda. I've had my operations team take a very close look at it, and it's a draft and we're continuing to work on it. but we presented it to the mayor and his team last Wednesday. They were very impressed with it, and we have some additional steps to take, and we plan to meet with them again this Wednesday. So hopefully a final determination regarding in-person summer school can be made. So I will ask if there are any questions, and also turn it back to Dr. Myers, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Cheryl, can I ask a
Yes,
question?
ma'am. Of course.
Thank you. So first I want to thank everybody who's been involved in this detailed planning, both from a curriculum standpoint and the flexibility you've built into the plan, and from a safety standpoint. Frank, my question is, do you know why they determined that 100 was the temperature at which a child would not be allowed to come to school? It seems like that's kind of a high threshold, is it not?
I don't know why. I do know that the guidelines have evolved over the past several weeks, and in our meeting with the mayor, we had been looking at one set of guidelines that had a 100.4 threshold, and the health director advised us that we needed to drop that to 100.0. I'm not exactly sure the science behind it, but that's what we're being required to follow.
Understood. I'm just wondering if we could do a little bit of digging. I have people in my network who had COVID and had very few symptoms, and they had a lower grade fever than that. And I think we could end up with the possibility of somebody in the building who has it and we haven't caught it because of that threshold. But obviously there are a lot of professionals who are dealing with this and know best. So I just was hoping that we could maybe ask what that was based on, because I think everybody involved wants to be sure that we're making the best and safest decisions for our community.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Barbara. And if the temperatures were differentiated, I could understand. So I'm not an expert, but my recollection is that children sometimes have higher body temperatures than adults to begin with, but yet we're using a one-size-fits-all body temperature when checking staff and students. So we'll see if we can find some more about how determined that we would go with 100.0.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Barbara, that's also in the Reopening Connecticut guidelines.
Godfrey or Diana, do you have any questions?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, Godfrey?
Regarding the questionnaires, Frank, they'll be asked of students. Do we have anything set up with any providers to help gain access for COVID testing to be done sooner than later? In the event that's a hurdle for any family looking to return back to school, or just to remove that from being a hurdle?
Godfrey, that's a good question. I've been working with Grace Vetter on the question set, and she has been in communication with Dr. Weinberger and Deanna Diamore. I don't know how readily available the COVID tests are, but we will certainly request that they be made available to us in the event that we have a family that suspects, may have symptoms, may have it. What we are going to include in our protocol, I initially was pushing to not allow the child or staff member back until they've received a negative COVID-19 test result. But in my conversation with Grace Vetter, she advised that that might be too strong a language, and that we more likely would need in the protocol some language around a healthcare provider being able to clear the person, that the person was not a risk to others before allowing them back into the school. But we will ask about the health department's ability to get tests for those that we suspect, really ought to have one.
Okay. And I also recall during that meeting, the issue regarding immunizations, in terms of that changing criterion for those able to come in who opted in for in person. So I need you to help me refresh my memory. They changed the decision around requiring everyone who's participating for in-school summer school to be immunized. Is that correct?
Yeah, my recollection, and we've been going over a lot of this, was yes, that individual learners would need to be immunized if they were going to participate in person.
And being mindful of that change of plan, is there a plan to articulate that to families who have opted in or expressed interest in opting in for the in-person, that this change has come up, and any supports to kind of help them get access to that immunization?
We're still developing the protocols. We got working on them Thursday after the meeting, and they're drafted. Nothing has gone out yet, but there would be some language covering that item in the protocol.
Can I just add, I found out today that there are 26 students currently who have been identified that are out of vaccine compliance. So we're looking at 26, and 3 students need physicals. I received that from Grace Vetter today, who's working with Joanne Malinowski. So we're looking at fairly low numbers. And so whatever protocols are developed, I think, we can certainly take care of that outreach.
Thank you for that context.
Okay.
Okay, I do have a couple of questions. One you answered already. I'm so happy to know that there will be a nurse in every building, so that's awesome. So let's see. So it looks like we'll have in each building we'll have a nurse, we'll have a custodian, security guards, and per Yvette, we'll have some additional paras. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And so just 2 other questions. So Parks and Rec, they haven't decided, but they will be using our schools. Is that going to be, tell me what that will entail if they decide, that they're going to use our schools? Will it be this, obviously we have a nurse, we have a security guard, but will that entail anything more, or will it, not necessarily, I don't want to say burden, that's not a good word, but will it not necessarily add anything to the load?
Well, there's initially had planned to be in 5 buildings, and they expect that there'll be approximately 2 classrooms at each site. So they're not expecting a large program. They would mean the proper ratios, students to adults. And I've been on a couple of calls with Nick Roberts on the city side and Leisha King. And the last time we spoke, they hadn't determined whether or not they were going to move forward with the summer camp. I think, if in-person summer school does happen, there's probably a greater likelihood that the summer camp program would run as well. But I think I can't answer for them on, whether or not they will run summer school, but they're very interested in meeting all of the guidelines that we've talked about tonight, if they do.
And would it be like, I think ours is 16, would that be the limit per classroom?
No, it's actually 10. 10
Okay.
in a room, so 9 children and 1 adult.
Gotcha. And I think for us, I'm sorry, for us it's 16 overall. Okay, so 10 per class. And can you just tell me what schools?
Sure. Let's see.
I have that available.
I'm sorry.
So at the elementary level, we're using 9 buildings. We're using Brookside, Rowayton. Columbus will be there with Rowayton. We're using Cranberry, and we've invited Wolf Pit to go to Cranberry as well. We're using Fox Run, Jefferson, Kendall, Marvin. Narragansett will be attending at Marvin. We're also using Silvermine and Tracy.
Gotcha.
9, and then we're using 2 middle schools. We're using Nathan Hale. West Rocks will attend at Nathan Hale. And we're also using Rowton, and Ponus will join Rowton over at Rowton.
Got it.
And that's for K-8.
Okay.
Okay.
And my final question is, so I'm looking at, like the responsibility list. I'm just wondering, like the teachers and the principals, what are their thoughts regarding the hybrid model? Are there any concerns about coming into the building at all?
One of the things I just want to speak to is when we were looking at an optimal summer program, we wanted a program of choice, not only for families, but for staff. So literally staff members who are working with their principals, some have asked to come in and they'd like to be in the hybrid or face-to-face, and some have asked that they would like to work remotely. And fortunately, in this model, we're able to offer the option, and working in summer school is completely optional. So it's only for those teachers who want to be able to teach in the summer program.
Sherelle, I don't know if your last question was specifically on the rec and park summer camp sites, but those include Marvin, Fox Run, Cranberry, Rowayton, and Merrimack. And they would need somewhere between 2 to 3 classrooms at each building.
At each building. All right. And so the principals, okay, so so it's optional and the principals all have the buy-in as well?
No.
I'm sorry.
No, a couple of our principals are sharing buildings because of the numbers, but principals who work 12 months.
Gotcha. And I'm just asking, just putting on my administrative hat, like if all staff are okay and, have had a chance to, ask any questions. I mean, it's pretty serious. I do know, people are dying to get out and, get back to business as usual, but I just want to make sure that the staff, I would love to know what they're thinking too.
Well, we even have had staff who are going to be working remote ask if they can come into the school to work. So there's a mix. Yeah.
Okay.
And everybody has a choice, and we're not forcing anyone to work. We also have some fabulous external candidates who have worked for us in the past. So if there are certain classrooms that need staff, then we do have a good list that come back every single summer to support us. And they've also received training over the years. And so I think we're going to be okay.
All right. Sounds good. Okay. Shall we move on? Frank, thank you. That was pretty extensive. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Sherelle.
Yeah, this is nice. Okay, let's see. Brenda, do you want to move on to the ELL update?
Yes, Helene's ready with her presentation.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. Okay, can everyone see it? Okay, excellent. Okay, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. This is a brief update, and it's 10 minutes or less. I timed it. I know we have a long agenda. An update of a report that Dr. Myers and I gave in December to the board on the status of English learners in our district. If you recall, this past fall, we had an unprecedented influx of L's, and this created actually somewhat of a crisis because we had so many unexpected students join our school district. We just weren't prepared for it. So just to give you, just to remind you, most of these students were from Central America and were SLIFE, students with limited and or interrupted formal education. Many had experienced trauma in their countries, such as violence, gang warfare. They were in detention centers before they came to us, family separation, etc. So they came with issues that we had to address. So we quickly needed to add classes, especially at the high school level, because most of them were older learners, clinical services, especially for those with trauma, bilingual staff to support students, families, and staff, and instructional supplies. We didn't have enough textbooks. We also had to secure appointments for them at clinics for their medical exams so that they could get into school, because of course they couldn't get in until they had their physicals. And with such a rush of students, there weren't enough providers for this. So we had to arrange for that. And the city actually helped us with that. So if you, on my screen, the last part is blocked off. Can you see my whole screen here? I'm sorry. I hope you can see the whole screen. So this is just a reminder of what happened with our enrollment. For what you see on the screen here is 15 years of the trend of our Ls. And in 2018, we had about 1,800 students. And then you can see that in 2019, in October, this is October of both years, we went up about 200 students. And these were students that we just didn't expect. So this was a spike. And these are the students that we had to accommodate, and this created issues for us in the district. So just to review for you now where we are. So this was the number in October of 2019, and this is where we are now. We have about 100 more students since October. So right now we have 2,152 Ls in our district, which is about 18% of the district. And what I've done here, just to summarize, the ones you see in red are the schools that continued to get an influx even after October. So that would be our 2 high schools and also Ponus and West Rocks. What you see in blue are the schools that have at least a quarter of their student population are Ls. So those are the schools that are highly impacted by the L population. And then what you see here in purple, Kendall and Tracy, I just wanted to point out the 2 schools that have experienced both, a continued influx of our Ls, and also they have more than 25% of their students, their student body are Ls, with Kendall being the winner at 36%. So fortunately, we were given with the support of Dr. Myers, the superintendent, the board, and the city, the EL special appropriation, and this is how we used it. At the elementary schools, we hired 2 more L teachers and 5 bilingual instructional aides. At the middle schools, we increased the L teacher by 0.5. We hired 3 bilingual instructional aides. In the high school, we hired 3 additional L teachers. And then we had to ask 10 teachers to take on an extra class. Most teachers at the high school have 5 classes that they teach. And we had to ask 10 teachers to take on a 6th class in order to accommodate all of our students and provide the academic classes that they needed, such as biology, algebra, et cetera, history. So there really was a big effect at the high school. We also hired 2 additional bilingual instructional aides at the high school. And then to support teachers at central office, we changed my position from 11 months to 12 months. We hired an EL supervisor. She's starting in the fall, actually. And then we increased the staff at the L Welcome Center by 0.5. And on the list, but not hired yet, we're having interviews soon, is 1 instructional coach and 2 additional bilingual instructional aides. And I have to say something about those aides, and the principals on the call here, I'm sure know this, they've really been the stars during this COVID experience, because they were the ones who kept us in touch with families, called the families to make sure that the students were available, searched out students who didn't check in, and really provided supports for our newcomers. So they did an excellent job during this whole crisis. To address the social and emotional needs, we also had a partnership this time with the city, the school district, and with Mid-Fairfield Child Guidance, who provided us with 2 bilingual clinicians. And right now there are 17 active cases, 2 bilingual care coordinators, and they have 10 active cases right now. And this is to help, these are families that are in desperate need of food, shelter, et cetera. So they're working with those families. And then during the crisis, they've provided other services, not just to their cases, but they've helped us with helping families find food, emergency financial services, rental assistance, and technology assistance. So with this influx and with the infusion of funds, how are our students doing? Well, the state measures school districts, the L's in the school districts by their growth, both in oral proficiency and in literacy proficiency. And each student has a target for their growth, and it depends on their grade and their proficiency level. So for example, in 2019, our Norwalk L's for oral proficiency, they attained 60%, I'm sorry, 60% of their target. That's what this means. So you can see from 2018 to 2019, we did very well. We went up in all areas, and we beat the state in all areas. As far as 2020 goes, students were tested in February and the beginning of March. We just made it the week before schools closed so that we were able to test all our students. The results have just come out, but the state has not done the analysis yet. So we're waiting to see how we did compared to last year and compared to all else in Connecticut. So that's for a future presentation. But I'm confident that we did quite well based on past experience. So I just wanted to mention a few things that have come up, especially for our L's during this crisis, and have been particularly concerning to us. As you know, that this crisis have brought out the haves and the have-nots in society. And this was certainly true. We saw this in Norwalk, unfortunately. We found out that a lot of our students didn't have Wi-Fi access. A lot of them did not have a device at home. Some of them, most of them had a cell phone, but very often their parent took the cell phone to work and they didn't have any device for online learning. A lot of our families have food insecurity. For these 3 areas, the access, Wi-Fi access, the lack of devices, and food insecurity, we tried very, very hard to make sure that all of our families did get Wi-Fi access and a device. And as far as food, you know that we had our food stations open so that families could get food, but some of them didn't realize where the closest one was, or they didn't get the message through email. So we did a whole campaign of calling every single L family to make sure they knew where to get food. So we tried very hard to close these gaps. But we are concerned about academic regression, of course, because of these factors and other factors. I wrote close quarters here because this is an issue with distance learning that some people don't think about. You know, when you think about our students at home learning, we may not realize that in a lot of our L families, they have very close quarters. They have siblings sharing bedrooms. They have several people living in an apartment, in a small apartment. So it's a little difficult for our kids to concentrate. They might be sharing a device with a sibling. So that's something we really need to think about. And what we're doing for our high school Ls, we're providing all of them with earbuds for summer school so that at least they can concentrate a little bit better. The other issue is that our L Welcome Center is currently closed, and that's a place where a lot of our families got support and help with different items. But we are reopening July 6th, so I'm happy to report that. And one last thing I wanted to mention has to do with the budget. I wanted to thank the board for listening and for providing the L department with much needed additional services for the 2021 school year. The superintendent had me write out our needs into 3 phases, as you know. And so almost everything in phase 1 was funded, which makes me very happy. And I want to thank you again. There was one item that wasn't funded, which was a pilot program we were hoping to start, but we moved that into phase 2. So hopefully we'll get funded for that next year. So again, I want to thank you, and I'll take any questions that you have at this point. And I'll stop sharing my screen.
Sherelle, can I speak?
Sure, of course.
Okay. So first I wanted to say it was a high priority for the board to fund your request. And if it were a better year, I would have pushed for those extra science teachers to be in phase 1 because we need them, but it wasn't. And that's the way it is. So hopefully we'll push on for phase 2. And I think we plan to discuss that at the retreat this summer. But I think there's also the possibility that Dr. Estrella will come in and evaluate the need and perhaps consider shuffling funds even beyond what we've approved so far. So our attention is definitely on your program and its success for sure. And thank you for the update. My question was regarding, so you mentioned that the Welcome Center was an obstacle as it's closed, as City Hall has been closed. Did we make any attempt to push out contact information for those employees so that we could have sort of a virtual welcome center? Or, you know, what provision was made to try and take that to the distance space that we've created for all of our programs?
Well, the phone was, we provided cell phones for our employees, for our bilingual aides and our people who work at the L Welcome Center. And the phones were transferred to the cell phones. So when we did get inquiries at the Welcome Center, we were able to address those issues for families. So that was good. We are presently moving actually the Welcome Center. The city has given us the community room on the first floor for temporary quarters, because the Welcome Center, if you know, is very small, and we wanted to make sure, right on the 3rd floor, we wanted to make sure everyone is safe. So we're in the process of organizing down there in the community center, and we hope to open July 6th. We have been keeping track of families that have come into the district. We have about 80 families that need to be tested. Their kids need to be tested for services. So July 6th, we're getting on the phone and we're getting all those families in right away so that they can be ready for school in the fall. And our bilingual facilitators who normally are in the Welcome Center, they've spread out through the district so they can help in many ways. They've been doing translations, they've been doing interpreting at PPTs. So we've made every single staff member to help our families as best as we can.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Godfrey, Diana?
Well, if nobody else has one, I'll throw one more out.
Go ahead,
Anybody?
Barbara.
Okay, so you talked about using the bilingual aids to help us connect families to resources. Were we able to increase our SNAP certification through that work?
I'm sorry, what was that? Increase what?
SNAP certification, what used to be food stamps, but is now SNAP. And that also then contributes to our ability to take a school to the CEP lunch program. So I'm just wondering if we utilized those bilingual aids that way, and if we haven't, should we?
We use them during the school year in that way. We give out the information to families. There have not been a lot of families coming in over the summer. So we'll see when we reopen in July. We'll give out that information again, but I think families are just waiting. You know, I think there are quite a few out there, but they're just waiting until we open, and we'll give out that information as we always do. But, you know, a lot of the families, well, some of them are undocumented, so they don't qualify. Some of them who have children who would qualify, but the adults are not documented or a little bit afraid to get involved with it. So there are some obstacles there, but we do try to explain things to the family, and, you know, hopefully as many as qualify, you know, we try to get them to do what they need to do to get that.
Okay, it seems like a place where you and Jill Kress could perhaps come up with a strategy to maximize certification, because that would help us on the other end from a finance perspective.
Right, right. And we have made strides in that area. This is the first year that we were giving out the information. Actually, it was brought to our attention.
That's
So we'll
great.
do that. Yep.
Thank
Anything
you.
else? Okay.
Okay.
Everyone.
Yep. Elaine, thank you also for your patience. We didn't get a chance to have you go on last time, so just say thank you.
That's okay. I didn't have to re-prepare. I was prepared, so it was fine. Don't worry.
We appreciate you. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Meyer, do you want to introduce Jennifer and what she's going to discuss?
Yeah, so, you know, one of the pieces that we've been so fortunate with this year is that we were able to add, for the first time in a long time, strong leadership in the visual and performing arts. And so Dr. Katona has done a wonderful work in all of our arts areas. And we thought the board would get a little update on the kind of work that's been done this year. Dr. Katona?
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know it's already been a long night, so thanks for the opportunity just to fill you in on the work that I've been doing for the past 11 months for the visual and the performing arts. So I'm just going to kind of take you through my time since August.
Okay.
So Norwalk Public Schools, which I'm so proud of the work that we do here, so in accordance with the Connecticut adaptation of ESSA, identifies the arts as one of the main core content areas that make up a well-rounded education. And we define the arts as visual art, music, which is chorus and instrumental, theater, dance, and media. And that's become important because one of the things I've been striving to do is really work on some branding. When I came to the district, I would find visual and performing arts in related arts or applied arts and not really sure what all of that meant, and really trying to make a cohesion there that we are the visual and performing arts and we represent those 5 art forms. Some are really robust and happening in a great way in Norwalk, and some we need to develop, but it gives us a plan on where we're going. Also spent a lot of time, I created a little logo. I kind of adapted, you'll see it on the bottom of the PowerPoint with Brenda Wilcox-Williams, just to give it a little bit of context when people see us, and tried to create a strong social media presence just to get the word out about all the good work we're doing. Can everybody see and hear what I'm sharing? Okay, great, thank you so much. And then I think one of the things I'm most proud of that really grounded our work was I had an opportunity just for 3 hours last August, sorry, my PowerPoint, to get together with the all 82 arts teachers and to craft the vision statement of what they thought the visual and performing arts in Norwalk would be. And we've had some chart paper everywhere and everybody wrote down their version of it. And I want to share it. Sorry, I'm going to have to, there's a little issue with my computer. Give me 10 seconds. I'm going to stop share and then reshare. And of course, I've lost it. Isn't that the way? Oh, I wanted to share with you. I should. Oh, my goodness gracious. Last time I shared with the board, my internet went out, and now this time that's. I'm coming back to you. Here we are. Can you see now? So the vision statement that they've created, written by all arts educators here, is the Norwalk Public.
Share it with us. We don't see your screen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Are
we cooking with gas now? Okay, good. Norwalk Public Schools aims to educate the whole child by providing an arts education experience that is robust, rigorous, innovative, multicultural, and authentic. Arts education learning is reflective of our diverse community and offers the opportunity for a wide array of options for the visual and performing arts. Through our culturally rich work in the arts, we aim to inspire all students to create, innovate, and explore while developing artistic literacy, critical thinking skills, and the ability to successfully collaborate, all essential skills in the 21st century. That's just the first paragraph of our vision statement, but it has guided us since August in all the work that I've been able to do with the arts educators. And I think that they really appreciated that those were their words. I took all their chart paper and kind of found the commonalities and wrote this, and then spent some time having smaller PD sessions with them, letting them look at it and revise it. And now that's posted on our website. I started my time back in September. It took about 3 months, but I visited individually with every school principal and every arts educator and CSDs when necessary or appropriate. And I asked 3 simple questions of everybody. What do you love about your program? What is your vision and goal for your program in your school? And what is keeping you from meeting those goals? I had piles and piles of notes. And for me, that really set the agenda on what we needed to do and what work needed to happen and in what order. So again, it all came from the teachers and the schools and the principals. And from that, I have 3 clear areas of focus. So there are district-wide K-12 initiatives that are systems and protocols. So I think for lack of leadership, a lot of people were taking on a lot of different leadership roles and trying to do things, but they were kind of happening in spits and spurts. And so I spent a lot of time trying to streamline that through the district level and then giving some guidance on that at the school-based level.
And just so you know, your screen is in presenter mode. So
I'm
we're
sorry.
seeing, it's a little hard to, because it's like a split screen.
How about now?
Still in presenter mode.
Really? Oh my
We see
goodness.
speaker notes and the slides.
Oh my goodness. How about now?
There you go.
Thank you. Great. So some of the key district-wide K-12 initiatives that I set out since I've been. The most important thing that became really clear to me was there was a need to restructure the band and strings shared position building assignments across the district. So as you probably know, strings instrumental teachers were shared as a 0.7 to a middle school and a 0.3 at an elementary school level. And at the elementary level, they were shared most commonly in a 3-3-3, so 1 teacher across 3 schools. And layered on top of that were our band teachers shared at a 0.5. This caused a lot of scheduling issues. It caused some buildings to have 2 classrooms for strings or band happening at the same time. And as you know, those classrooms have to be at certain temperatures, they have to be soundproof. There's a lot of requirements for those rooms. So asking schools to have 2 of them on any given day was also a challenge. And then because the scheduling was starting to get so constricted, pullouts then became kind of a burden. So that was one of the first things that we needed to shift and change. And I'm happy to say that a lot of the schools, pardon me, did take the recommendation to move their strings teacher to a 0.5 starting in the fall, and the middle school is bringing their strings teacher to a full time. And that's going to alleviate a lot of the structural issues. It's going to have 2 schools, 2 teachers, they'll alternate. So they'll only need 1 room, 1 space, and then the schedule will really be consistent. And I think that's going to free up the schools. And at the middle school level, it's really going to help us build those strings programs. We see a dip in strings at middle school, and then that's carrying through to the high schools. And we really needed to work on that. Our band programs are thriving, middle into high, but we're seeing some dip in middle into high at the strings level. And we think that has a lot to do with the fact that the strings teacher just isn't there to build those programs. So that's been a big positive initiative. Now it doesn't. I've spent some time trying to have some district-wide PDs with the teachers, pulling them together in small groups however I could. It's a little tricky with the different dismissal times across elementary, middle, and high school, but we've done a good job, and that became really important when we moved to remote learning. So there was some sort of foundation for them. A lot of community partnerships. Previous to COVID, we had a strong partnership with Disney Theatrics, Disney in Our Schools with Rowayton and Wolf Pit as 2 pilot programs. We started a program with Millennium Dance, offering some free dance programs to our students, strengthening our partnership with Silvermine, so it's a little more intentional, Silvermine Art Center, Westport Country Playhouse. So really starting to build those out, see what the needs are district-wide, and be intentional and smart about our community partnerships. Another thing that I noticed when I went around was a need for an auditorium audit. So a lot of schools, PTA maybe grabbed a sound system or had somebody donate something. There was a lot of uncompatible equipment in our auditoriums. One, that's slightly dangerous, but two, it was burning out after 3 years. It wasn't money well spent. So I brought in a consultant to audit the auditoriums and provide each school with a framework. So as money comes in or somebody thinks that they can support the sound or the lights or the curtains, they have a checklist that they can go back to. So we're building some compatible equipment. Also, students can learn that equipment in elementary and take those skills with them. So we're also starting to slowly build a technical theater aspect to our work, which is really important. Pre-COVID, and then it became most important during COVID and next year, is starting to look at our technology and software needs for visual and performing arts, particularly visual art and music. So part of that has to do with the STEAM work at PONUS. Some of that has to do with the Adobe Cloud and bringing some of that work that they're doing at the high school down to the middle school so that those students are more strongly prepared. And then with COVID, we just want to branch out music technology and be mindful and thoughtful and have that be a district-wide initiative. Just proud to announce that if you hadn't heard already, that we were named one of the best communities for music education in the country. And I think that comes from that rebranding and that telling and that social media story. It's just pulling out all the work that was already being done, but letting people know about it. And then the last part of this time has been supporting remote learning. And a lot of you, I think, got a chance to see our district-wide virtual talent shows, the music concerts. We did 18 virtual concerts. We were able to hire an editor for the district. So schools that wanted to opt into that took advantage of that and really strong quality. And then a lot of the schools, particularly all of our elementary schools, did virtual talent shows. We also did the district-wide, citywide art show. Great. On the arts integration, there's been a lot of work obviously done at Wolf Pit. This is actually year 2 of my work with Wolf Pit, as I started last year as a consultant with them. So our work here has just been building. We implemented this year our Wolf Pit lesson plan. So we have a format that is specific to Wolf Pit that really talks about the arts integration aspect of the work, starting to look at their new literacy, reading, and math curriculum and how the arts can be an integral part of that. They start their school year with ensemble work and then some strategies that they are using year to year to year. I'll just share one bit of data that kind of came out early that we're all really proud of. So they have 3 kindergarten classes and they did a little control group. They did a traditional read aloud of Little Red Hen and 2 of the classes, and then they did an arts integrated version of that same telling. And when they asked the students to sequence it for accuracy, the 2 traditionally read got at about an average of a 23% were able to sequence. And with our class that did the arts integration model, 100% of the students had accuracy in sequencing and retelling the story. So that gave us the fire we needed to just keep going and doing the great work we're doing at that school. Nathan Hale, which will be our next level of the K-12 arts pathway trajectory, started to do some work there before COVID, particularly did some PDs around the use of improv to generate student questions and tried to bring some of that learner-centered work through improvisation. And I worked directly with about 4 or 5 7th and 8th grade classes. And I did a PD for all the teachers where they got to see the work. Then I did it in different classes and the teachers watched me, and then I debriefed with them after, and then they did it with the classes. So it's been a nice rollout of that work and starting to dip our toe over there. And they'll be hiring a theater teacher next year, which will be great to start building that program there. And then we continue to do our work with Norwalk High School, Academy for the Arts, and see where that takes us as we continue this K-12 pathway. And I consult with PONUS on their STEAM work, so how I can support them on arts integration there. And then I have one last slide, just next steps, so where I kind of see the next places for this work to go. So in 2021, we'll continue all the initiatives that we began this year. We're just starting to the tip of the iceberg. In August, we'll be doing some work around writing the curriculum map K-12 for visual arts district-wide. We need to really work on strengthening our skill-based instruction. There's a very classical perception on the arts, and I really want to ground our work in a little more cultural responsive teaching. So taking that lens, particularly with our work in August, some more professional development for our teachers, just some more coming together and sharing of ideas, diversifying our repertoires, and starting to build some dance programs and after-school theater programs. And that's it. That's all I have.
Great.
Very impressive.
Good first year.
I have to work on share screen, but other than that,
Congratulations.
I see some clapping. Thanks. Guys.
Sherelle, can I ask a question?
Of course you may.
Thank you. You mentioned some of the partners, and I know that, for instance, Midori had been slated to come in to work with the Norwalk Youth Symphony, and that she was going to come to West Rocks to work with Mr. Durrell, and that didn't happen. But I heard many of the partners, but I didn't hear Norwalk Symphony and Norwalk Youth Symphony on the list.
And that is such a foul, and that's only for technology. They were such a good partner during remote learning, and I'll be sending out some more information about that, so follow us. But they filmed 5-week lessons. We did some early planning with them. Their conductor and then the different families of the instruments filmed really, really great for our K-5 students. And they were really also instrumental in helping us promote the band and strings programs, because we weren't in the building, so those teachers couldn't be going to classrooms to show. So they took that lift for us, and they did videos that kind of showed the kids what the different instruments were. And then we followed that up with a video we created that said, you can play this instrument and here's how you do it. So that was a huge partnership.
That's phenomenal. Do we have those videos banked that we can archive and make available?
Yes, yeah, they're working on that. They're going to archive them on their website, and then I'll send it out once it's all together.
Got it. That's exciting.
Really exciting.
I'm
I have
trying
a
to
question.
Yes,
You done,
Diana?
Barbara? I
I
wasn't
have
sure
one more,
Barbara
but you
was-
go and I'll come up behind.
Okay. You had mentioned that you did, you were looking at, I can't even speak, technology, light, sound, auditorium, and things like that. Were you looking also at the instruments that are at the school, for example, either the pianos or the cellos, you know, the instruments that are there that the teachers have that either the students that can't afford to rent or borrow or things like that? Were you looking at those also? And do you have?
Yeah, so that's a couple different layer questions. So pianos, I know was in the budget at one point. We do need to talk about getting rid of some of the pianos that are just kind of stored in the auditorium and bringing in some newer ones. So I'm prepared and ready to go whenever the funds are available. I did an audit of the school, so I know exactly what has to go and how many more we need to bring in. And we have a 3-year rollout for that. In terms of like,
Just as a reminder to the board, that was our request in the capital budget, which is where that would go, and that was rejected. So we had put together a comprehensive plan because, Diana, we really have a piano issue, and it's hard to build a music program without a quality piano.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking, so that I know for myself and my notes. Okay.
yes.
Yeah,
so we're ready when you are.
I remember the board actually requested if we could pivot in our strategy when we were not able to secure the capital funding to perhaps renting pianos in the schools that have the most need for an upgrade. And I don't know if it sounds like that did not happen. But
I think just,
maybe we could do that.
yeah. So your other, can you hear me, Diana?
Yes.
Okay, so your other question was about cellos and instruments for kids who could not get them. So we also had a partner, I also created a stronger partnership with AAA Music out of Norwalk, that they do 2 things which are really great. One, if you rent your instrument from them, they give a kickback to the school for which you rented it. They keep a little record of that, and then teachers can go there and get oils and strings and extra things they need for their classroom. The second thing that we did is they have essentially, once everybody kind of got their instrument, we went back and said who was not able to for financial reasons, and they donated those rentals straight up. So that's been really great. We also made sure that all of our materials were in multiple languages, so that we were sure that we were making sure all the parents had all that information. And then this year, all of our videos that go out to promote the programs are in dual languages. And then your last question about cellos and other instruments, same thing. When we needed to have bigger instruments in the building and then a kid needs to take one home, a kid can't bring a cello back and forth, AAA was really great about letting us borrow one for the school.
Thank you.
Okay. So
Barbara, did you have another question or?
yeah, I did. So it was regarding the development of after-school theater. And that opens a few questions that I have that I'd really like us to be thinking about in your second year. Sometimes we've touched on them, but I'd love to have a broader discussion. So 2 years ago, we had a presentation that we were going to try and create a student-based budget for extracurriculars so that we could have the money follow the student in the same way that we have spending for sports, for instance. And so I think the board would appreciate some sort of discussion of what our funding is for the arts extracurricular and how things are being funded so that we can think about, we know that a budget is a moral document, right? So you fund what your priorities are. So if this is a priority and we've been recognized nationally that it is, then we need to talk about funding it commensurately. So that's one question. And then that also brings up the equity question about access. So I know we've had schools where in order to be in the show, you had to be able to get to rehearsals before school hours. And if you're a kid whose family doesn't have a car and you take the bus, maybe you couldn't be in the show. And so that's an access issue. And I know that one of the coolest, there were so many innovative ideas this year in the budget as we worked around the COVID obstacles. And one of the ones that I thought was really smart at CGS, they were not able to travel for their trips that they usually take. So they're investing in a van so they can take small groups to culturally appropriate programs that supplement their program, their magnet program. And you know, I had studied New Britain, I think it is, where American Savings had provided philanthropic dollars to allow for second wave busing for students to be able to take part in extracurricular programs. So I would really love it if we could look at what are the obstacles to children being able to be involved in theater and after school in arts programs, and how can we creatively problem solve to make sure every person has access.
Yeah, thank you.
Whether it's through our budget or through philanthropic dollars. But I think that's the next step. It's great that we have programs, but it doesn't serve us if we don't serve everyone.
I agree. I'll just address those really quickly. So I agree with you. There were a lot of schools where the students have to do some fundraising to be in the, no child was ever turned away. Let's be really clear, but there was a hope that they could help with some fundraising. But I did give out some guidance early on, I think in February, to school leaders, just to say, if you are currently running an after school arts program, this is really how much money you should be allocating. So we are starting to have those conversations at the school level, and principals are really receptive, but it's all new, right? So we're just kind of building that culture. The second one is, as we are creating these programs and those conversations, the equity and access comes up, and Rob's on the phone and on the call, and one of the schools that we started an after school program before COVID was at Row 8 Inn, and that was one of our number one questions, right, that we had to problem solve, is what time does the second wave bus come? And we worked backwards from that. So it's very much part of the planning in these after school programs.
That's great to hear.
You okay, Barbara?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very big problem we're going to need to tease out in multiple phases, but it's good to hear that it's on the radar.
For sure.
And hopefully the next time we see you, we'll have more thoughts and plans to address it. But I hope that you are able to work with Ralph to prioritize finding funding for for your programs, because sometimes, you know, we could ask a funder for pianos, you know?
Right.
So that might be a way to solve that problem.
Yes, for sure.
Thank you, Barbara.
Of course.
Okay, and Jennifer, thank you again for all of your work and your energy. I can hear it in your voice that you love what you're doing. So
I do,
yeah,
Cheryl.
and we need that. We need that energy. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank
That's
you.
very sweet. Thank you. Thanks for suffering through my tech issues.
No, that's okay. You did better than I would. So no
We have
worries. No
all
worries.
had tech issues for the entire
Of
month of
course.
March. Every meeting I went to represent the budget, I would get cut off after 3 minutes of speaking. So I feel you
Barbara,
entirely.
we did that on purpose. No, I'm only kidding. Oh wait, no, don't put that on the record. Never mind. I was joking. Joking with
A
you.
little too late for
Laura,
that,
strike
Cheryl.
Pardon?
A little too late for
Laura,
that.
strike it. Okay, moving on.
Whoever taking the minute, strike that joke. All right, so I guess we should move on. Dr. Meyer. Dr. Meyer, you're usually my timekeeper here. So do you want to introduce Damien and Evan as if no one knows them, but would you like to introduce them?
Well, I'm really proud of the work. You know, it's so nice. We're firm believers in Norwalk about choice schools, and we know the power of having strong leaders that create an identity, right? And that schools are the unit of change. And when you have you build an understanding with community and staff and students about who you are and who you can become, the dreams really start to show potential. And it's been so wonderful working with Damon and Evan this year, building out that vision of a STEAM Academy and what the possibilities are. So they wanted to give the board a little update about year one, even with COVID.
All right.
Okay.
We're going to share? Okay.
I'm gonna share my screen and we should go here.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having Evan and I. We greatly appreciate the time that you're giving us this evening to talk about our update on our STEAM Academy. We started this journey actually not this year. We actually started last year in a small conference room at the Norwalk Inn, and we brought a variety of stakeholders together from Ponus and Jefferson. Dr. Myers was there, Tina was there. We had representation from the Gifted and Talented department. We had representation from our Dean of Students and Technology Coach, Ms. Knapp. So it was a wide variety of people with a lot of information on what we thought it would take to develop a STEAM Academy. We took the notion that we were going to start working backwards, and Dr. Myers and Tina actually posed this question to us. What kind of promise do we want to make this to the students of Feelings of Ponus Ridge when they graduate from the STEAM Academy? What type of skills should they possess? What type of learning experiences should they have? And what are we going to ensure our families and students that they will have by the time they leave? And we came up with different ideas, and we juggled these things around, and we talked about problem-based learning. We talked about students engaging in productive struggle. Letting them know that it's okay to make a mistake and learning from mistakes, because that goes with our growth mindset mantra, that we're not in this fixed state where if you don't get something right the first time, you're doomed forever, that we want to take chances and take risks. And before we even got to bringing that to the students, we had to make sure that attitude was brought forth with our staff. So once we finished with those meetings at the Norwalk Inn, we quickly went back to the building, Evan and I, and we started to have meetings with our vertical house leaders. And then we talked about the vision and what it would look like. And then that quickly morphed into Evan, myself, Ellen Knapp, our vertical house leaders. Then it morphed to our subject area leaders. Okay, the 6 people in our core content areas that were actually had their feet on the ground with the teachers. And we started talking about growth mindset and collaboration and authentic assessments and feedback and all the things that we thought, with the guidance of Dr. Myers and Tina, would make a very successful STEAM Academy. That quickly morphed into more work with Dr. Giselle Martin-Kniep, and we talked about different levers that we could talk to our teachers about what teachers we could really rely on to get this work across. So it just wasn't Evan and myself and Ella Knapp talking about these things. It was starting to grow systemically. And before we knew it, we were meeting with another consultant, Angela Lawler, and we were starting to build out these transdisciplinary units, which included, as Dr. Katona alluded to, our music teacher, our art teacher, our coaches, our house leaders, and we're going to start to pilot transdisciplinary units in grade 6 and grade 8 with our school. But then we were hit by COVID-19, and it brought us to this point. But if I go back a second, I'll let Evan go and talk about how we had to update our professional learning plan to move from one phase to the other.
So we entered this year with some really nice ELA growth across all grade levels, and some math outcomes that we wanted to focus on in particular. And so our original professional learning plan focused on increasing those ELA math outcomes and also looking at implementation of Ruler with staff. A team worked with Yale over the summer in that emotional intelligence training through Ruler, and we wanted to kind of implement that year one work with staff. And it wasn't that we left that behind, right? That was still part of the work that we did and we continue to do. But we realized that in order to go forward with our STEAM identity and the work we were trying to do, it needed to be embedded within something larger. And so that's when we started to make that shift to incorporate some more collaborative time with STEAM and that identity. And we had professional learning that was supported by Dr. Myers and Tina, and learner-centered initiatives like Dr. Lewis talked about with Dr. Giselle Martin-Kniep and Angela Layler, to build these transdisciplinary units, these experiences for our students that if they were in a particular grade in a particular house, was a unique experience to them and something that they could work through and something that they could experience being part of Ponus Ridge as we moved into this identity. And so part of that work, and Dr. Lewis spoke to this a little bit, we wanted to make sure it encompassed teachers from all 4 core classes. But in order to be truly STEAM, and Dr. Katona spoke to this a little bit as well, it goes beyond that, right? Technology education, music, the arts. We wanted to make sure that all of those subject areas were incorporated in and had a voice at the table. So that staff was embedded into this professional learning, and they used Define STEM kind of as a primary resource to begin to work through this idea. Initially, if you'll see at the third bullet point, March 23rd to the 27th, we had defined as a STEAM week for our grade 6 team in Princeton, which is one of our houses, to embark on this initial unit of study. You'll see at the bottom, grade 6 says food truck. They had come up with a unit that grade 6 was going to embark on that dealt with the different aspects of this. That goes into making a food truck, the nutrition, the marketing, the business model aspect in terms of pricing and sales, what it looks like in terms of community outreach, how you balance a budget. So it brought in a lot of those different areas that we were speaking to in terms of putting that into action. Obviously, COVID had other plans, so we just missed the implementation of that during that week of March 23rd to the 27th. But we still have plans going forward once we have a little bit of a larger grasp on what next year looks like to implement that professional learning in action.
Wonderful.
We talked about during the year, we had a timeline. We changed the structure of all of our faculty meetings, and we made them much more along a professional development lens. So every faculty meeting, we made sure that we broke into teams and we invited some external presenters in to talk about growth mindset and trauma-informed care in December and January. And then our next level of work was to think about different thinking routines in the classrooms. And what we did with all these things, we followed up after our faculty meeting on one Monday. We'd ask someone to try one of the thinking routines during the week, and then we would have subject area leader meetings the next week, and our coaches would facilitate the subject area leader meetings, And the teachers would talk about the routines that they tried in their classrooms and the success that they met with, the challenges that they had, and the resources that they needed as well. And to March, before we left out, we started to talk about feedback and feedback loops and how students were working in peer groups and giving one another feedback on either writing or short answer responses. It was highly successful in some of our world language classes, as Evan can allude to. And we always stayed on the lens of our work and what was happening. We weren't afraid, and that's, I don't want to use that term. We weren't deterred by asking what's working and what's not working. We wanted to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly, because that's the only way that we could grow. And as leaders, we always have to show that we have that open mindset and we're acting in a growth manner so people can follow our models and what we're doing. So teachers were open about what was working, what wasn't working, and what they needed support in. We also had we hosted one of the middle school leader meetings, and we had representatives there from the other 3 middle schools, and we talked about our timeline and what authentic assessments look like and what thinking routines look like and how we're going about this work in a very methodical and intentional and deliberate manner. Tina Henkel also joined some of our meetings, our Friday morning early meetings at 7:30 with some of our teams, and she was there to facilitate and help monitor what was going on as well. So all in all, it's been a great experience, and we're looking forward to getting back into the building and implementing some of these things. Evan?
Yeah, this was all about capacity building, right? So, the growth mindset work, we watched a video called Highlighting Mistakes, right? Where a teacher discussed how when she handed back assignments to students, she would hand it back with all of their mistakes highlighted. And rather than giving them the grade initially, they would get the grade about a week later, but they would talk through their mistakes and what was your favorite mistake and what could you learn from it. And students then went through those highlights, and part of the learning continued in terms of what could you do differently. And Dr. Lewis alluded to, I went into world language classrooms after that, and I would walk in unannounced drop-ins and they would be talking about their highlighted and favorite mistakes. I walked into an accelerated math classroom and they got their exams back without a grade, and mistakes were highlighted and they had 10 minutes to kind of work through. And now that you have another shot to look at this, what do you think you might have done wrong to get some points back? And so a lot of this, as we went through, was about capacity and staff buy-in and them kind of owning it. When we did the growth mindset, which you'll see on the next slide in a second, it all came from them. As a Ponus Ridge staff, what do we think teachers that are showing a growth mindset are doing in the classroom, and what should students be doing? During that March feedback meeting, all of our presenters were teachers. We had a math teacher, social studies teacher, science teacher, reading teacher, and gifted and talented teacher talk about and bring student work and show in real time in kind of a gallery walk way what it is they did with feedback in terms of best practices and things that worked for them. And also, like Dr. Lewis spoke to, we had those instructional leadership meetings that Tina sat on, and we expanded over time. And we were very clear that those meetings were about curriculum and instructional based. It wasn't operations. It wasn't, well, we wish we had this resource or this money. It was, what is working instructionally? How can we build capacity? How are you being a leader as a colleague and as a peer? And how do we kind of push that out long term? Just to kind of speak to that, those growth mindset ideas, after multiple iterations, this is the work that our educators came up with in terms of what growth mindset looks like at Ponus Ridge from the educator lens and from the student lens. And there are some teachers who have this taped to their Chromebooks and their laptops as they walk around. Like Dr. Lewis said, and Dr. Myers was at this meeting, we did a vertical house leader meeting with the middle schools, and we openly asked for those practitioners to go around and go into classrooms and see, is this happening, right? Use this kind of as a checklist to determine, are you seeing this in real time? So that's really important work to us going forward, as well as the kind of the new courses and experiences that we're looking at going forward.
This work didn't happen just at 21 Hunters Lane. We invited our parent groups into the building during the evening, our PTO, our SGC, our Hispanic parent group. We handed out our 2-page STEAM vision. We asked for feedback. We asked for different things that people would want to see in our model and what students would look like when they were promoted in 8th grade. And the feedback we got was was fantastic. So we're going to continue full steam ahead, for lack of a better term, and we're going to continue to bring this information to our families and students. So we're ready to implement.
And just to briefly touch on some of the things you see on this screen, in terms of new courses and experiences, we talked about those STEAM units. Dr. Katona briefly discussed how she's been consulting with these groups. We have a music technology course with MacBooks and MIDI controllers, which are like pianos that have certain technology associated with them, many keyboards to do garage band and kind of music outside of just the instrumental lens, but music technology. We're continuing to do digital literacy work through learning.com and hiring a full library media specialist to help teach digital literacy to students and what that looks like in the 21st century, but also to support other teachers in terms of their technological resources and digital literacy in their classrooms. And tech ed, as we move into our renovated STEAM and tech lab space, what that looks like in terms of collaboration and new ideas. And all of this, again, is with the main objective of increasing opportunities for students to approach the arts and technological advances and resources flexibly, right? Not just in those 4 core courses, but across the board in all of our core and related art courses for a world that we don't know yet. You know, Dr. Meyer spoke at Convocation about, you know, the top 10 careers and how those change over time. And a lot of this is we're trying to prepare and give our students the skills to approach that work for careers and jobs we don't even know exist yet. So like Dr. Lewis said, we're very excited about what's next and the work we've done and looking to bring that going forward into the following school years. So with that, if there are any questions.
If I could just add one additional piece of information, and Jen Katona might want to add in, through our work with the STEAM school, we were very fortunate when Jen came on that she had a partnership and with a colleague through the University of North Florida, and a small group of the Ponus Ridge teachers were actually involved in a STEAM college course through Jennifer's grant. There's about 10 of us, myself included, and we just completed a 14-week course through the University of North Florida, and we all will now be STEAM certified, and we earned a STEAM credential. It was quite awesome. It was a great experience, and I just want to say thanks, Jen, for bringing it to the school and to the team.
Cool.
Thank you for that.
Can
Any questions?
I don't have a question so much as something to throw out there as a collaborative growth mindset moment. First, I want to really applaud how you're leaning into the growth mindset and how that looks in a STEAM model. It's so exciting. I think I've shared with some of you that my parents' largest discovery that ended up on television and patents and all that was an accident. And then they developed from there. So I think making mistakes is the most important thing you can do in science. A couple of things I want to just throw out at you. There's a program called MuseScore that's free for digital music. So you wouldn't have to pay licensing for something like Finale. And it's a really wonderful program. So my brother was a comprehensive co-teacher in science, and he did a lot on the physics of music. And there's quite a bit of work that you can do in terms of, you can actually take duct tape and the contractions blocks and make a sound wave, you know, in reality. And that really helps children visualize that sound as a wave. And then the last thing I was going to throw out, I was at the Marine Biological Laboratories, and they had a dance troupe in residence a couple of years ago, and they actually reenacted mitosis as dance. And it was so cool. So that's another one of those ways that you can integrate the art with the science. And so anyway, just wanted to share those resources as things to think about and leap off. And
Barbara,
please let me come visit.
What was the first resource you gave again, Barbara?
Muse Score.
Muse Score.
MUSESCORE. And I only know about it because I was desperate for something for my kid that wasn't expensive, and it's extraordinary. You can build a whole orchestra and it plays it for you back, and it's all free. And I think that music theory and physics are a really good discipline to teach together because the theory is based on the physics.
Yeah, and that was certainly something our teacher teams noticed, and we have really kind of brought home, and we're thankful for Dr. Katona's collaboration on this, is we didn't want this to be a core course idea only.
Right.
To be true STEAM, we needed to make sure that that arts integration was happening. Otherwise, our students weren't going to get the full experience. So those resources are certainly helpful.
The best ones are the free ones.
Right.
Diana Godfrey? They must be muted. All of
No,
it
I
was
said I'm all
fascinating.
good.
Pardon?
Loved it. No, I said I'm very excited with this program. I was actually looking forward to March, but that didn't happen. I was gonna go.
I'm just excited to see us kick off. Great presentation.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's fascinating to me is the fact that you're preparing, students for jobs that we don't even know yet. That's just so fascinating to me. I mean, like, that's so fascinating. So, anyway, thank you. We appreciate your time and energy that you put into this, and your spirit is excellent. So thank you. Well, let's see. So, if Mr. Pennington is up next, Brenda, do you want to introduce that?
Thank you, Sherelle. Sorry, I was trying to unmute. There we go.
I know that happens to me all the time.
So, we worked really hard to build a comprehensive approach to literacy, reading, writing, listening, speaking, and viewing. And we have a range of resources that we use across the district. And so in Rowayton, we have a particular resource that's been part of the literacy family. And Rob's going to give an overview to the board tonight about the literacy programs they've been working with.
Hi, good evening.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for having me this evening. I'm very excited to share about CKLA and the program, the comprehensive approach to literacy that we are implementing at Rowayton School. So give me 1 second to pull up the presentation. Janine Goss will be sharing a little bit with me. So let's get started. There we go. Everyone can see that. So just really quick, at Rowayton, we are a school of 490 students. We seem to be growing every single year. And CKLA was brought to Rowayton back in 2015. And it was before the district had curriculum maps. So when they first started, it was a program that they pretty much followed as is. And one of their missions of CKLA is excellence and equity for all, which I think, one of our school's core values is that we really pride ourselves on being a great school, but to be a great school, we have to be a great school for all students, not just for some of them. And so that's something that with CKLA, one of the big pieces is they really want to focus on students not just spending time decoding in the earliest grades, but really trying to focus on building background knowledge and vocabulary so that they can understand the complex texts later. And so in K through 3, they really have a 2-strand model. The 2-strand model focuses on listening and learning and then skills. So that's the 2 components. And they give equal amount of time to both. And so in listening and learning, it really is focused on a read aloud of complex text. But what's really great about it is that it builds knowledge in history, science, literature, geography. And it's not just focusing on different, it's wide, well-versed, and it spirals. So that's one of the pieces that I think is really great about it is in first grade, they're going to study about astronomy, and then they're going to go deeper in third grade. So it's something that is constantly coming back. And it really has helped build our students' background knowledge. Now, the skills component, it's very comprehensive. It's a systematic phonics program. It focuses on decoding and fluency. And one of the things that I really like is that, some basal readers, they are very specific for decoding, but they're not interesting. And then you have some leveled readers that are interesting, but don't focus so deeply on the decoding skills that students need. And so what the skills strand does is it really, they have their own stories that focus on both the phonetic instruction, but also on topics that are interesting for students. So that is the two-strand model that has really, this has been at the school for 5 years, and we have seen really strong academic gains from our students. There are areas with any program, you can't just follow a program as is. We need to constantly adapt. And one of the things that we are constantly using is the comprehensive literacy approach. Janine, you want to take a minute and talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Although I apologize because in looking at this slide, you see those little words in the circle? I'll have to read them to you. They're quite small. We've spent a considerable amount of time over the past year thinking about how we would articulate Norwalk's approach to literacy instruction. And as Dr. Myers mentioned, I think the best word to use would be comprehensive. And if you look here at this circle map, this is one of the tools, one of the maps that Cranberry uses. It's a thinking map. This circle map illustrates for us what is at the core, and that says independent reading and writing. And then independent reading and writing at the core is supported in different ways by teachers in what's around that core. So I'll read some of them to you. From the most highly scaffolded reading activities to the least highly scaffolded, which is the independent reading and writing. You've got the read aloud, of course, shared reading, guided reading, word study vocabulary, writing workshop, whole group writing, interactive writing, differentiated groups. All of those support what we want students to be able to do in terms of independently reading and writing. And our strategic operating plan over the past few years has indicated that Tier 1 needed to be redesigned. And so I think the concept of this comprehensive literacy approach certainly does address that. And when you think about CKLA, or you think about any resource, such as Journeys that we've used in the other 11 schools, they both required supplemental approaches and additional resources to address this balance. And that's what Rob is going to talk about next in terms of what are some strengths, what are some weaknesses, and how Rowayton has really improved in some of these areas of a comprehensive approach.
So one of the things that we did last year, and I'm going to stay here for 1 second, is we used this comprehensive literacy approach to look at and see where we had some real gaps or areas that we can improve upon. And one of those was really in the area of writing. And so what did we end up doing is we had the extra 30 minutes added to our time, to our instructional time this year, and we focused on adding in writing. That was going to be our deep dive. We actually used our school improvement plan tied with our professional learning plan to really focus on focusing on writing, analyzing student writing. We brought in a writing coach to our school. And so everything is interconnected. The first day of the school year, the teachers actually dove in and they looked at CKLA and they said, okay, where can we bring in our writing units to support what we're working on? And we saw our students throughout the year. We had data meetings where where teachers would come with the students' writing and they would analyze student writing. And it really just brought us into this better approach to literacy. And everything is interconnected. We're using CKLA, but we're also bringing in this independent writing, this writing workshop model to help focus on growth. Now, as I prepared for this, we started to look and say, what are some of the strengths and what are still some areas for us to grow? And so if we were to look, CKLA is very, very strong in nonfiction. And I think that that is one of the greatest strengths of the program, is that students are reading nonfiction and they're having conversations. And one of the other great things that I've noticed is that we've added in a new science curriculum, and CKLA, because there's a lot of connections that we're able to use in our listening and learning and in our literacy program to enhance the science. Because in 4th grade, there's a unit on erosion. Well, we have a whole unit on geology and CKLA. So you can see how we bring those together to make students' understanding go deeper. It's a strong phonics instructional program, very strong with the listening comprehension, which is something that I think really does build our students' background knowledge. It will help level the playing field by building that background knowledge. But if there are things that I think are missing and our team thinks we could still grow upon, is small group differentiation, independent reading. There isn't time with CKLA because it is a program and there is a lot of spiraling and a lot of skills that the teachers are working on. There isn't time for independent reading, and we need to make sure our students have time to independently read books that they would like to read, to have choice and voice in their reading. And then the other piece is that there is a lack of diverse texts. And so this is something that as we look into the 2020-2021 school year, we are looking to add in a literacy specialist to help with our small group differentiation. And that will be tied into our school improvement plan and our professional learning plan. And then working with our curriculum office, we are going to be adding in for teachers to have more choices for students to read. And then we're looking to bring in more diverse text for all of our students to have opportunities to read as well. And I wanted to share a couple of our writing pictures just as I talked a little bit about our 4th grade, and our 4th grade, they were choosing different natural disasters, but one of the great things is they wanted to make them come to life. So they did this. One student was doing a project on tsunamis, and she had her story, but she also, when she went to present, made it come to life. And that was tied in with CKLA and writing. So really trying to make that literacy come alive and create a love of learning in our students.
Wonderful. And I think your scores are pretty good too over there. I know what you're doing in reading has been very, very impressive.
We have done very well academically the last few years.
So that's wonderful, Rob. Really, really happy. Very impressed. I think just a few people that I've talked to who are in your school have been very impressed with it too.
I mean, like I said, I think that the fact that we are giving, we're reading these stories, and we're dedicating time for that listening comprehension at a young age. And we're not just focusing on decoding, but we're also focusing on comprehension and background knowledge. Is something that we see as students get older, they're able to have better access the complex texts.
Mm-hmm.
And
Phenomenal. So just a quick question. So as far as the independent reading, how are you building that in?
we are going to be intentional as a team around making sure that we are hitting all components of the comprehensive literacy model in our instruction. So as we're planning, we are going to have different components like shared reading component. What is that going to look like in our plans? Independent reading, where are we building that in, and how are we going to ensure that we're constantly doing that? So it comes down to our planning for instruction. And so we're using that comprehensive literacy model to help guide our approach to instruction.
Okay.
Sherelle, we've received
Wonderful.
some feedback as well from other schools, other teachers, that independent reading needs to become a goal across the district, and not only at Rowayton, but across the district. And so we are definitely going to make some measurable goals around that and have some strategies in place in order to achieve that. And one thing that we are going to do is to help classroom teachers purchase additional materials to support their students. And we have to wait till they get back in the buildings in September, God willing, so that they can take a look at their libraries and be guided through a process to look to see where the gaps are in terms of author series or genres or topics that students are interested in, and making sure that all of our students can see themselves in the texts that are in their classrooms. So that will become a goal across the district.
That's awesome. Anybody have any questions?
I just wanted to take a moment to recognize that, Rob's done a fabulous job as a leader in the building, and he doesn't take a program and he's really designing the framework and then aligning his resources to it. And so when he came and he said, these are the areas, and we know the state test isn't going to measure writing, but writing is one of the most important things for our students. And so how are we going to make sure that we're developing writers? So each step of the way, I know that he's a real instructional leader, and he continues to try to always push and improve the quality of instruction for all kids. So I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. We'll try.
Kudos, Rob.
Oh, thank you, Sherelle.
And kudos to everyone, all the work and the energy. So we really appreciate it. And Dr. Myers, I'll echo what everyone else says. Thank you for your leadership.
So I do have a little question.
Sure, go ahead.
About how we structure independent reading time, and not just at Rowayton, but at all of our schools, and I think also at the middle schools. The two most, one of the great things about being on the board and being a parent is that you can draw from your experiences in various classrooms across the district. And I have to single out two instructors that have just made a huge difference for my readers. One was Mrs. Massey at Cranberry, because she really leaned into the small group structure and into extension activities and research and group-based inquiry into their text in a way that was so great. So that got me thinking about the value of a book club or a book group, and the relationship that you build with those people and how you start feeding off of each other. It took my child was rigid in what books they wanted to read, and by being in a group with a more diverse set of kids, my child was willing to be more adventurous in what she read. And then the second person I want to really call out is Miss Stargarter, and the way that she's been doing co-teaching. First, we experienced it at Cranberry and then at West Rocks. And the structures that she put in place to celebrate literature and create stations and small group discussion was also incredibly successful. So the more we can spread that good stuff around the district, and make it kind of something that we're known for in our district, that would be something to be very proud of. But
I agree. Here, here.
also, yay, good job, Rob. Sorry, I'm very tired.
I just want to say, you know, the teachers at the school are amazing. They're the ones putting day to day, going all out for kids. So I just want to give all of my teachers huge shout out, because they're constantly looking at the growth mindset and how can we get better for kids.
Wonderful. And your leadership helps too, so. All right, anybody have any additional comments?
I just want to echo what has been said. Thank you. Thank you all for your great work.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Diana,
No,
you okay?
I am good. I'm just in awe of all the information and all the work that goes into everything.
Mm.
You guys are still my favorite committee. Always the best of the month.
Well, we knew tonight
All
would
right,
be
well-
fun night, but we didn't want to cut any of our topics out. So we appreciate your tenacity this evening.
Of course.
Well, we appreciate you all. This is, you know, some really good work.
Mhm.
And again, we appreciate Helene's patience. So thank you. And I know, you know, parents, you know, who've been sort of, you know, held in abeyance regarding the school plan, you know, really will appreciate the layout. So if no one has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Wait, public comments?
Oh,
There were no public comments that we know of.
Just putting it on the
Should we-
record. Thank you.
No, I made sure that it was on the agenda. So thank you. Okay, going once, going twice.
Let's go.
All right, motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Well, aye. Second.
Good night, everybody. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night,
Thank
and
you
thank
for all
you.
the work.
Thank you.
See you.
All right,
Hopefully at the
take
retreat
care.
soon.
Bye-bye.